I never thought I'd be back in this bedroom again, sitting on the edge of my childhood bed with the familiar weight of family expectations pressing down on me. The framed photo in my hands showed my sister Vanessa's graduation, my parents beaming with pride while I stood slightly to the side, my smile practiced but hollow. I placed it face down on the nightstand as the muffled sounds of Vanessa's sobbing drifted up from downstairs. My name is Mia Thompson. I'm 31, a marketing director at a firm in Denver, and I've spent the last decade building a life far away from this house and the people in it. Yet here I was, summoned back by an emergency phone call from my mother, Barbara. The door creaked open and my father's stern face appeared. How could you do this to your sister? His voice was low, accusatory. After everything we've done for you. I met his gaze steadily. I haven't done anything, Dad. He shook his head, disappointment etched in the lines of his face. Your mother needs you downstairs. The familiar knot of resentment tightened in my chest as I descended the stairs. My mother sat on the couch, arm wrapped around Vanessa, who dramatically dabbed at her mascara-streaked face. She's here, my father announced, as if delivering a criminal to trial. My mother looked up, her eyes narrowing slightly. Mia, we need to discuss what's happening with the beach house. And there it was, the real emergency. Not a health crisis or genuine family concern, but property, money, the currency that had always defined our relationships. What about it? I asked, remaining standing while they all sat in judgment. Your father's will, my mother began, her voice carefully measured. The money he left you was meant to help with the family property. Vanessa's wedding venue fell through and we thought. You thought you'd use my inheritance to pay for her wedding. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't regret them. Vanessa sniffled loudly. It's not like you need it, you've got that fancy job and apartment in Denver. I almost laughed at the absurdity. The $600,000 my father had left me, the only acknowledgement he'd ever given that I too was his daughter, was apparently community property in their minds. That's not what Dad intended, I said quietly. The beach house needs major repairs, the foundation is cracking, the roof leaks. We can fix it after the wedding, my mother interrupted. Family comes first, Mia, you've always been so independent. She said it like an accusation, and suddenly I was 8 years old again, being scolded for not sharing my new colored pencils with Vanessa, who had already broken her own. The wedding is in 3 months, Vanessa added, her tears miraculously subsiding. Everything's booked, we just need the venue deposit. How much? I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. 200,000, my father said, as if discussing pocket change. The room went silent. I looked at each of them, my mother's expectant face, Vanessa's manipulative pout, my father's stern authority, and felt something shift inside me. A lifetime of being the responsible one, the afterthought, the open wallet when needed, and the invisible daughter when not. No, I said simply. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. What did you say? My mother asked, leaning forward. I said no, my voice grew stronger. I'm not using Dad's money to fund Vanessa's wedding extravaganza while our family home literally crumbles. Vanessa's face contorted. You've always been jealous of me, always, just because Mom and Dad paid more attention to me. Because you demanded it, I shot back. Every accomplishment of mine was overshadowed by your latest crisis. My college graduation, you had a breakup that required the family's full attention. My promotion, you needed money for rent that month, every single time. My father stood, his authority filling the room. That's enough, your sister needs our support right now. I laughed then, the sound surprising even me, and I've never needed support, not once. You've always been the strong one, my mother said placatingly, the independent one. Because I had to be, because no one was ever there for me. I turned and walked out, ignoring their calls behind me. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, breathing deeply to calm the storm inside me. My phone rang, Jenna, my best friend from college. Hey, how'd it go with the family? She asked cheerfully. About as well as expected, I replied, starting the car. They want my inheritance for Vanessa's wedding. Jenna's incredulous laugh was validating. Are you serious after everything they've put you through? Dead serious, 200,000 for a venue. What are you going to do? I pulled onto the main road, watching my childhood home recede in the rearview mirror. I don't know yet, I said, but I'm done being the family ATM. Back in my Denver apartment that night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the hardwood floors, replaying decades of similar scenarios in my mind. The time my parents borrowed my college fund to pay for Vanessa's private school. The Christmas they forgot to buy me presents because they were too busy with Vanessa's dance recital. The countless times my achievements were footnotes in the story of our family, while Vanessa's minor accomplishments were celebrated like Nobel Prizes. My therapist, Dr. Chen, had a term for it, family scapegoat. For years, I'd tried to earn their love and approval, believing that if I just worked harder, achieved more, gave more, they would finally see me. I opened my laptop and pulled up the file containing my father's will. He died 6 months ago, leaving the beach house to all of us, money to my mother for upkeep, and separate inheritances to Vanessa and me. My $600,000 was the largest single bequest, a shock to everyone, especially my mother, whose face had drained of color when the lawyer read it aloud. She doesn't need it, she'd whispered to my father's attorney. There must be some mistake. There was no mistake. For once in his life, my father had acknowledged my worth, and now they wanted to take even that away. I opened a new spreadsheet and began documenting every financial interaction with my family over the past decade, the loans that were never repaid, the family vacations I subsidized, the emergency bills I covered for Vanessa's car repairs, medical expenses, rent when she was short. By the time I finished, the total approached $75,000, money I'd never see again. I called my father's lawyer the next morning. Ms. Thompson, what can I do for you? Mr. Geller's voice was professionally warm. I need to understand something about my father's will, I said. The beach house who controls decisions about repairs and maintenance. That would be jointly held between all beneficiaries, with your mother as the primary decision maker, he explained. However, your inheritance was specifically earmarked in your father's notes, though not legally binding, for potential major repairs to the property. And if those repairs aren't made, the property will continue to deteriorate, potentially becoming uninhabitable or suffering structural damage that would significantly reduce its value. I thanked him and hung up, then called a contractor I knew who worked in the area of our beach house. Mike, I need a favor. Could you inspect my family's beach house and give me a detailed report of all necessary repairs? And I mean everything from critical structural issues to cosmetic problems. Sure thing, Mia. When do you need this? As soon as possible, and Mike, my family doesn't need to know about this just yet. While I waited for Mike's report, I did some digging into Vanessa's wedding plans. A mutual friend who worked at the original venue let slip that they hadn't fallen through at all. Vanessa had canceled them because she'd found somewhere more Instagram-worthy. I scrolled through her social media, noting her posts about designer dresses, exotic flower arrangements, and a guest list of over 300 people, all while the foundation of our family home literally cracked beneath our feet. My phone pinged with a text from Jenna. Drinks tonight? You look like you need to vent. We met at our favorite bar downtown. Jenna arrived with her signature red lipstick and no-nonsense attitude. So they're trying to rob you blind again, she stated, ordering us both whiskeys. What's your plan? I sipped my drink. I'm still figuring that out. You've been figuring it out for 20 years, Mia. They're not going to change unless you force them to. I know, I sighed, but they're still my family. Are they, though? Jenna leaned forward. Family supports each other, family celebrates your victories, family doesn't treat you like an ATM and an afterthought. Her words stung because they were true. I'd built my life around being the reliable one, the fixer, the provider, and what had it gotten me? A family that took and never gave back. Remember in college, Jenna continued, when you got that marketing scholarship, and instead of celebrating, you had to wire money home because Vanessa had maxed out your mom's credit card. I nodded, the memory still sharp. And remember when your dad missed your graduation because Vanessa had a minor fender bender. It wasn't even her fault, I recalled bitterly. She just didn't want to deal with the insurance company alone. Exactly, Jenna's eyes flashed. So when are you going to stop letting them treat you this way? I thought about the contractor's inspection scheduled for tomorrow, about the mounting evidence of my family's casual financial and emotional abuse. Soon, I promised, very soon. Mike's report arrived in my email 3 days later. It was worse than I'd feared. Foundation issues that needed immediate attention, electrical problems that posed fire hazards, plumbing that was one harsh winter away from bursting. The total estimate for critical repairs, $385,000. That same day, my mother called. Mia, we need to discuss the wedding situation. Vanessa's been crying for days. Actually, Mom, we need to discuss the beach house situation, I countered. I've had it professionally inspected. A pause, you what, without consulting me? I have the report right in front of me. The place needs nearly $400,000 in critical repairs. That's ridiculous, she scoffed. The house is fine, your father always took care of it. Dad's been gone for 6 months, and before that he was too sick to maintain it properly for at least 2 years. I kept my voice level. The foundation is cracking, the electrical system is a fire hazard. This isn't optional work, Mom. Another pause, longer this time. We can look at repairs after Vanessa's wedding, family comes first. The familiar refrain made my blood boil. The beach house is family property. If we don't fix it now, there won't be anything left to enjoy after the wedding. Mia, be reasonable, your sister has spent her entire life being your priority, I finished. I understand, but this time I'm making a different choice. I hung up before she could respond and immediately called Mr. Geller again. I want to establish a trust for my inheritance, I told him, one that can only be used for repairs and maintenance on the beach house, with payments going directly to approved contractors. That's certainly possible, he said. It would protect those funds for their intended purpose. How quickly can we set it up? I can have the paperwork ready by the end of the week. Perfect. My phone immediately rang again, Vanessa this time. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her tear-filled message accusing me of ruining her special day, of always being selfish, of never supporting her dreams. The usual emotional manipulation. I texted her back simply, the beach house needs repairs. I'm using my inheritance for that purpose as Dad intended. I'm sorry about your wedding plans. Her response was immediate and explosive, a string of profanity and accusations that I'd always been jealous of her, that I was trying to punish her for being Mom and Dad's favorite. I didn't respond. Instead, I drafted an email to both my parents and Vanessa, attaching Mike's detailed report and photos documenting the beach house's deterioration. I explained my decision to establish a trust for the repairs and included a proposed timeline from Mike about when work could begin. I ended with, I value this property not just for its monetary worth, but for the memories our family has created there. I want future generations to enjoy it too. I hope you'll understand that this is the responsible decision, even if it's not the one you'd prefer right now. After sending it, I turned off my phone and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in months. The next week was a barrage of emotional warfare. My mother called my office in tears. Vanessa showed up at my apartment unannounced, pounding on the door until my neighbor threatened to call security. My father left stern voicemails about family loyalty and responsibility. I held firm. The trust was established, the contractors were hired, and work on the beach house was scheduled to begin the following month. Through it all, I maintained a calm, professional demeanor that infuriated them more than anger would have. You've changed, my mother accused during one particularly heated phone call. You used to care about this family. I still do, I replied evenly. That's why I'm saving our beach house. At the expense of your sister's happiness. Vanessa's wedding isn't my financial responsibility, and a one-day event shouldn't take precedence over preserving property that's been in our family for generations. The silent treatment came next, no calls, no texts, no emails. It was meant to make me cave, to make me so desperate for their approval that I'd give in. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in years. I threw myself into work, earned a promotion, and started dadding again, a sculptor named Eric who valued independence and had healthy boundaries with his own family. I consulted regularly with Mike about the beach house repairs, which were progressing well. 3 weeks before Vanessa's wedding date, my mother called. We need to talk, she said, her voice lacking its usual manipulative edge, in person about the beach house. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I arrived first and chose a table in the corner, ordering herbal tea to calm my nerves. When my mother walked in, I was struck by how tired she looked, how much older than her 62 years. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sitting down across from me. I nodded, waiting. I've been to the beach house, she continued. I saw the work being done, the contractor, Mike, he showed me the problems they've found. I hadn't expected this and… You were right, the words seemed to physically pain her. The house was in terrible shape, worse than I realized. I sipped my tea, not trusting myself to speak. Vanessa's downsized her wedding, she continued. We're having it at the country club instead. It's less extravagant but still nice. I'm glad you found a solution. She looked down at her hands. Your father left you that money for a reason, Mia. I didn't want to see it at the time, but I do now. What reason is that? I asked, genuinely curious. Because you're the only one of us who would actually use it the way he intended. Her eyes met mine. You've always been the responsible one, the one who thinks about the future, not just the present. The compliment was unexpected, especially from her. Thank you for acknowledging that. I haven't been fair to you, she admitted. For a long time, neither has your father. I let the silence stretch between us, unwilling to make this easier for her. We always expected more from you because you seemed so capable, she continued. And Vanessa was always so needy, it became a pattern, a bad one. Yes, I agreed simply, it did. I'm not asking you to forgive us overnight, she said, but I am asking if we can try to build something better, starting now. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation. Finding none, I nodded slowly. We can try, I said, but things have to be different, real change, not just words. I understand, she hesitated. Would you consider coming to Vanessa's wedding? She sent an invitation to your apartment last week. I hadn't received it yet, or perhaps I had and hadn't opened it. Having sorted all family mail into a separate box, I checked only occasionally now. I'll think about it, I said honestly. As we parted, she hugged me, a real hug, not the performative ones I was used to from her. It felt strange, but not unwelcome. I did attend Vanessa's wedding, bringing Eric as my date. It was indeed smaller than originally planned, but still elegant. Vanessa, to my surprise, thanked me publicly during her speech. My sister Mia couldn't contribute to the wedding fund, she said, champagne glass in hand, because she was busy saving our family beach house from collapse. There was nervous laughter from the guests. And while I was initially mad about it, I've realized she made the right choice. That's who Mia is. She sees the bigger picture when the rest of us are caught up in the moment. It wasn't a full acknowledgement of years of unequal treatment, but it was something, a step. After the reception, she pulled me aside. I'm sorry, she said, the words obviously difficult for her, for a lot of things, but especially for expecting you to fund my wedding. Thank you for saying that, I replied, and congratulations, it was a beautiful ceremony. We're having a small family gathering at the beach house next month once the major repairs are done. Will you come? I considered it, measuring my boundaries against the possibility of change. I'll try, I said, but I'm not making promises yet. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of the restored beach house, watching the sunset over the water. The property was transformed, structurally sound, beautifully updated, ready for another generation of memories. My family was transformed too, though more slowly and with occasional backsliding into old patterns. My mother now asked about my work without immediately shifting the conversation to Vanessa. My sister had started therapy, recognizing her own role in our dysfunctional dynamic. My father, most surprisingly, had apologized for his favoritism during a private conversation that left us both in tears. I maintained my boundaries firmly. No more loans, no more dropping everything for manufactured emergencies, no more accepting the role of family scapegoat. Some days were harder than others. Old habits died reluctantly. But as I stood there watching the waves, I felt something I hadn't experienced with my family in a very long time: peace. Not because I'd punished them or because they'd suffered, but because I'd finally valued myself enough to demand change. The revenge wasn't in destroying them, it was in refusing to be destroyed, in standing firm when they tried to consume me again, in reclaiming my power and redefining our relationship on my terms. Eric joined me on the deck, handing me a glass of wine. Beautiful view, he commented. I nodded, thinking not just of the ocean, but of the journey that had brought me here. It is now. Your family's inside debating dinner options, he said with a smile. Your mom actually asked for your preference first. I laughed softly. Progress. We rejoined them, entering the house that my inheritance had saved. The house that had, in a way, saved all of us by forcing a long overdue reckoning. As I sat at the table with my imperfect family, I realized that the most satisfying revenge wasn't making them pay, it was making them see. See me, see themselves, see the truth we'd all been avoiding. And in that seeing, in that truth, we had the chance to become something we'd never truly been before, a family that valued all its members equally. The work wasn't finished, it might never be completely finished, but it had begun, and that was enough.